Good evening. In my continuing reviews of 1970s vampire movies, we come across a rather strange entry that I was not actually aware of until last year. I saw this on Tubi. I just rewatched it tonight to refamiliarize myself with it before I did this review. That is Dan Curtis's Dracula from 1974. Dan Curtis, as you may or may not know, is the creator of Dark Shadows, which was referred to as a quote-unquote vampire soap opera, which starred Jonathan Frid as Barnabas Collins, and was very popular at the time that it was produced. This one stars Jack Palance as Dracula. This is Jack Palance's second movie with Dan Curtis. He had done a version of Robert Louis Stevenson's The Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and it was actually quite good in that, much closer to the novella than the earlier versions and subsequent versions. Still strayed a bit, but it was really quite good. Murray Brown plays Jonathan Harker. Simon Ward plays Arthur Holmwood. Nigel Davenport plays Abraham von Helsing. Fiona Lewis plays Lucy Westerna. And Penelope Horner plays Mina Murray. And Sarah Douglas, Virginia Wetherell, and Barbara Lindsey play Dracula's brides. There's some incidental characters, but they're not terribly important. It follows the basic story of, Jonathan Harker is a lawyer who goes up to Count Dracula's castle in Transylvania and is asked to procure him a plot of real estate in London, or the London area, and presents him with several possibilities, and despite the fact that it's not the best, he chooses Carfax, a desanctified abbey. Interestingly enough, the location they used for Carfax Abbey in this movie is Oakley Court, which was famously used as both the external of Frankenfurter's castle in the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and also the castle where the two female vampires live in Jose Larraz's excellent vampire movie, Vampires, spelled Vampyres. Two, again, great 70s vampire movies, albeit once a parody. But they go there, and some interesting things occur. One of the things is, and this is not in the book, but it's interesting that they did this, and I think this is actually one of the first inferences, is that Jonathan Harker looks at a painting on the wall, which is apparently of Jack Palance, and a girl who looks like his wife's friend, Lucy Westerna. And he sees that it says Vlad Tepes, ruler of Wallachia, 1475. The real Vlad Tepes was, in fact, the ruler of Wallachia. He was what's called the Wawade, and was the kind of a chieftain. He led the Romanians. This Wallachia is in Romania, what's now Romania, and he led them against the Turks a number of times. He was known to be a very cruel person, and he had a particular penchant for impaling his enemies on spikes and allowing them to die a very slow and horrible death. Hence, he came upon the nickname Vlad the Impaler. His real name was Vlad Tepes, and he was known as Vlad Dracula or Vlad Dracula. Dracula does not actually, in this film it says it means devil. Actually, it means son of the dragon. Dracula means dragon in the ancient Wallachia. But he was known to be a very fierce warrior who defended his land against numerous invasions by the Ottoman Turks, and was successful, though he was eventually deposed, imprisoned, and ultimately he died in battle in 1477. He was killed in a battle. Some people say he was assassinated, but that has not been proven. He asks Jonathan Harker, he says, do you write a letter telling your employer that you'll be here for a month? He says, a month? I don't want to stay here for a month. And Dracula uses his hypnotic powers and convinces him His three wives, who, as I said, are played by the gorgeous Sarah Douglas, who people may know from Superman 2 as her character Zara. I remember her as Catherine Cornelius from the very bad adaptation of Michael Moorcock's book, The Final Program. And Virginia Wetherell and Barbara Lindsey, who are the two other wives of Dracula, attack Harker in his sleep. Dracula intervenes and says, he's mine, get away from him. And later, Harker falls into kind of an enchanted sleep, and he wakes up and he sees these peasants. He exits his window through a vine and climbs into a lower window. This is from the novel, and finds the coffins of both the wives and Dracula, and he's going to kill Dracula, and two of his henchmen knock him out. And then when he wakes up, everything's gone. All of the Dracula's coffin. He looks out the window, and these boxes of earth are being moved by some more of these peasants, and he can't get out now. And then the wives descend on him again, and when night falls, and this time he has no one to stop them and no way to defend himself. So ostensibly he is turned into a vampire at that point. Movie now skips to London. Dracula has moved into Carfax Abbey, and Lucy Westerna is suddenly becoming ill, and her fiancé, Arthur Holmwood, who is played by Simon Ward, is very concerned, and he calls in Dr. Abraham Van Helsing, played by the wonderful Nigel Davenport, fantastic British actor, and he suspects that something supernatural is going on, but he doesn't say until he can prove it, but he notices the puncture marks on Lucy's neck. Can't prove it quite yet, but she has apparently been sleepwalking, and every time she comes back from sleepwalking, she's weaker and weaker. And we find out, of course, that she is going out to meet Count Dracula. There's some very kind of erotic undertones in this. She makes rather orgasmic noises as Dracula's biting her. I noticed something interesting, and this is kind of good, actually. The vampire teeth are not the eye teeth, as they are in some movies, the teeth on the end. They're the bicuspids, they're the ones in the front. And I think that makes sense, because those teeth are meant for biting. The teeth on the ends are molars. They're made for grinding. They're not biting teeth. So it makes more sense that the vampire teeth lid the bicuspids. Those were well done. I thought the effect. It looks a little cheesy, but still okay. The makeup effects were very good, as was the set. The set decoration is fantastic, as was the costume design by Ruth Myers, and the special effects by Kit West were all quite good. Let's see what else. I made a few notes here. Told you already about Oakley Court. Lucy is partially saved by a transfusion from her maid, and that gets the bad blood literally out of her and puts new blood literally into her, so she begins to recover. We discover later that Dracula has a power to control wolves when he kills a night watchman using a wolf, and then later that night a wolf breaks in on Arthur Holmwood and Mrs. Westerna, Pamela Brown, who are trying to keep awake so that they make sure Lucy doesn't go sleepwalking again. And Arthur is almost killed, but he kills the wolf with his revolver. And he's badly wounded, but he's not killed. But of course, Lucy has now escaped. Dracula's put Mrs. Westerna into a hypnotic sleep. The servants come in and wake them up, and then they find Lucy has been going to this bench in the garden, which is where Dracula seduces her and drinks her blood. They find her at the bench, only this time she's dead. She's buried. They have a funeral service for her. And then she returns later that night and starts knocking on the window. There's a myth, and again, I don't recall this being in the book, but I think it's incorporated into the movies somewhat, that a vampire cannot cross a threshold unless he or she is invited. So Lucy is begging Arthur to let her. She says, "It's cold in here, let me." He says, "I can't let you, you're dead, She says, "No, I'm not dead, I'm right here. he foolishly lets her in, and of course she's about to bite him in the neck, and Van Helsing steps in the last minute, holds up a big crucifix, and she goes, you know, backs away. It's not that vampires are afraid of Christianity. It's any symbol of good. It could just as well be a Star of David. Anything that's a symbol of good will frighten away a vampire. So the crucifix is an obvious tool to use. Lucy backs out of the window and vanishes. Later that day, they go into her crypt, and Van Helsing drives a stake through her heart, killing her finally. Later on, Count Dracula goes down into the crypt, and tries to wake her up, finds out that she's been stationed, basically goes mad, starts smashing her. Jack Palance does a really good job. His performance is very subtle. He uses a lot of hand gestures and facial gestures. He doesn't overact, but he uses appropriate force at appropriate points, and comes across very well as this, grieved count. The reason that he was so attracted to Lucy is that she resembled his dead wife, who was murdered by the Ottoman Turks. If we're going to conflate the historical figure of Vlad Tepes with Count Dracula. Then there's a whole thing about, there was a scene earlier, which is again from the book, where a ship called the Demeter is found pitched up on the beach in Whitby, England, and the only people arrived, there was only one person aboard, and that was the captain, who had lashed himself to the wheel and was holding a crucifix in his hand, but he had a horrified look on his face. The only thing they found in the ship were 10 boxes of earth, and these boxes were, Harker and Van Helsing start tracing these boxes through different shipping companies, trying to find out where did they go. They went from one place, town to another town to another town. Finally, they went to Carfax Abbey. Well, they go to Carfax Abbey, and during the day when Dracula has to sleep, they find there are only 9 boxes. So obviously Dracula has a second hiding place that they don't know about. Well, to prevent him from using the boxes again, they destroy the earth and they burn the boxes. Now they confront Dracula. Dracula has been staying at this place called the George Hotel. They confront him, and he slashes his chest open and makes Mina Harker drink his blood. And now she says, "You're blood of my blood. You're basically my slave, you always will be." And then they threaten him with a crucifix, but he's going to strangle her. So that Van Helsing drops the crucifix, and he leaves and says, "Nothing on this earth can stop me. You're not going to stop me." And disappears. Then he goes back to Carfax and discovers that all of his boxes have been destroyed, and now he's got no place to rest. He screams out this unearthly scream. I don't know how he did this, but Jack Palance really carried that off. Maybe it was a special effect, but whatever it was, he gives this unearthly howl that's really, really terrifying, scary. They find that through Lucy, because she is connected, she's drunk Dracula's blood, they hypnotize her, and they can see through Dracula's eyes by asking her questions. She says she sees darkness. I said, "Do you hear anything?" She says, "Water. I hear water outside." So now they know he's on a ship. He had come to England from Varna in Yugoslavia, and they figure, that's where he's going back to, so he can embark back to Castle Dracula in Transylvania from there. And they're going to take the train across Europe to beat him, to beat the time of the ship. That's a reasonable thing in that period of time, that they could have done that in the early 19th century. So they take the steam train, from England to Varna, and they locate the at Castle Dracula. They go to Transylvania, find Castle Dracula is a wreck. It's basically a ruin. But in the basement are the coffins of the 3 vampire brides who Van Helsing destroys. And then finally they are confronted by Dracula. And they're attacked by Harker, who is now quite mad, and he's a vampire. And they've discovered that there's a pit of stakes in the basement, and there are impaled skeletons on the stake. It's kind of gross, but again, it fits with the conflation of the two characters, Vlad Tepes and Count Dracula. and then Harker lunges at them, they step aside, and he falls onto the stake, and it plunges through his heart and kills him. Now they have to confront Dracula himself, and they wait for him to come, and he comes into the room and says, now you're in my domain, and now you're not going to leave. And he starts advancing on them. They hold up the crucifix to him, and he backs away, and he knocks over a table, knocks the crucifix out of Holmwood's hand, and they're starting to advance on him. Van Helsing rips away the curtain, and the sunlight streams through. Vampires cannot stand sunlight, so he's forced into. He tries to run down the hallway, but they've torn down the curtains in all of the rooms in the castle, so there's nowhere for him to hide. And finally, Van Helsing takes a wooden lance and stabs it through his heart, all the way through his heart and through the back of a table, which again I thought was kind of gross, but it was really a good special effect. Unlike the Hammer Dracula movies, there is no decomposition. His body doesn't turn into a skeleton. He just bleeds out of the mouth, and he dies. And then it cuts to the portrait of Vlad Tepes and his wife, and a scroll comes up that says, in the late 13th century, a nobleman by the name of Vlad Tepes ruled the area then known of Yugoslavia, known as Transylvania, and it is said that he was a strong, fierce warrior who was unbeatable in battle, and he was so strong that some say that he was able to defeat even death, and there have been no facts to prove that this was not so. Well, that was kind of an interesting ending, and kind of bodes for me maybe the fact that even though they killed him, he might still not be dead. As we know, Dracula has a habit of coming back, but he doesn't in this movie. Very well made, and I didn't realize it was a made-for-TV movie. I never saw it on TV in 1974. I was only 5 years old, so I wouldn't have seen it. But I was 15 years old actually, but still I didn't see it at the time. I wasn't aware of it. Some interesting side notes. There's a bit of a legacy. The Marvel Comics Tomb of Dracula comic their version of Dracula was based on Jack Palance from this movie, and I thought that was kind of interesting. Also, when he was preparing to make Bram Stoker's Dracula, Francis Ford Coppola, knowing that this movie was closer to the book than a lot of interpretations said, basically because it was originally called Bram Stoker's Dracula, not Dan Curtis's Dracula, and he acquired the copyright to that title, Bram Stoker's Dracula, so nobody could conflate the two stories. He used similar elements, including Dracula's attraction to Lucy, who was played by Winona Ryder in the movie. And some of though again, he did do things closer to the book, like the scenes of Dracula's brides killing the baby, which was in the book, and apparently eating it. And also the character Renfield is not in this movie, and he is in the book, so that's also in Coppola's version of Bram Stoker's Dracula. Anyway, this version, Dan Curtis's Dracula, is very well worth watching. Jack Palance does a fantastic job. Everybody, all the actors in this were really good. Fiona Lewis is gorgeous, a beautiful redhead, and she's really good as Lucy. I highly recommend watching this.